Hello everybody, I am Boofire191. Despite the multitude of memes and the amazing performance by Ian McDiarmid, Palpatine is an idiot. A straight up stupid individual who had one job: don't piss off your populace. But he messed it up so poorly, it got him killed. Let's rewind, and I'll elaborate. Right now, I'm going to ignore his rise to power, which is less Machiavellian, as many people think, and more blind dumb luck, where your opponent is so inept, you look good by comparison. Let's take a quick look at his plan. Create a crisis and abuse the system to get more and more power to the point where you are a dictator in all but name. Decent enough, I suppose, but the prequels wrote this aspect so poorly that when he proclaims a galactic empire, everyone just agrees. Fucking what? Even Padme seems to be dumbstruck by the display of retardation in the Senate. Again, Palpatine was only able to pull that off because his opposition is incredibly inept. Hell, the simple fact he was able to get away with his lie that the Jedi, you know, the people who've defended the Republic for thousands of years, despite the Republic not having a military, tried to overthrow him in a coup to take over. Dumb. Again, that's just the failure of the prequel's writing. With that said, I want to talk about what Palpatine did with his power, and how amazingly dumb he was with it. The Empire could have worked. Straight up, if the Empire was not ruled by Palpatine, but was instead led by Vader, or someone else high up on the Imperial chain of command, the Empire wouldn't have had to face the rebellion. I'm not saying there wouldn't have been rebellions. What I'm saying is they wouldn't become the alliance we know from the films, and they wouldn't gain galactic-wide popular support. To understand where I'm coming from, let's take a look at Palpatine's policies, starting with slavery. Under Imperial Decree ASL 4557.607.232, this is important, guys, you're gonna have a test on this. Imperial Laws of Star Wars. Non-humans and humans who spoke out against the New Order, those who committed crimes against the civil order, as it was put, could and would be enslaved. In turn, they would work on military projects, which would most likely lead to them dying in the end. First off, instituting slavery into a government whose predecessor kept it illegal is dumb. This could and would lead to revolts. With that said, slavery was a problem in the Republic, but it was officially illegal. But moving on. The Empire would have to constantly dump resources into keeping these slaves down, as well as ending rebellions. For an empire that has the resources of the galaxy at their disposal, slavery is just unnecessary. Instead of using slave labor and diverting funds to keep them docile, secure, and under guard, just hire people or use droids. Seriously, you would have a cheaper, less revolt-crazy populace of willing workers who are there to work. If a slave can mess with what is being produced, if a slave can slack off just enough to not get noticed, they're going to do it. Just look at Galen Erso from Rogue One. He worked loyally, but he made a deliberate weakness in the Death Star. A worker who is there willingly, a worker who is being paid a decent wage, will work harder and better than a slave. Slavery is just a stupid risk. However, there's more to it than that. In the Imperial Decree, non-humans, aliens, can be turned into slaves on a whim. Humans have to disrupt the civil order of the Empire for them to be enslaved. Now, a law that states criminals have to give back to society could work. Those who disrupt civil order or break the law. Yes, it's slavery, but the people of the galaxy could be able to tolerate it. Think of mandatory community service. The same sort of thought pattern persists. But when the law discriminates against aliens, when they can just be enslaved, you create an outgroup. You create an other. One of the most striking aspects of the rebellion is how many homeworlds of aliens, like Dak with the Mon Calamari, joined the rebels. Palpatine's irrational fear of aliens and policies of discrimination and oppression led to them revolting. They fought back. They probably wouldn't have if you weren't being dumb. Throughout the Empire, alien species are treated worse than humans for no real reason. The Empire is an authoritarian dictatorship where the rights of the individual are taken away for the betterment of the Empire. The people have it worse now than when they were in the Republic, but the situation for the Empire is more dire at the start than when the Republic was at peace. What I'm getting at is two things. If you're going to make laws that oppress the people, oddly enough, make sure they're equal. If everyone is going through the same misery, then they can comfort one another, and you as the evil dictator can make up a reason as to why you're doing what you're doing, and it will hold more weight. This leads me to my second point. If Palpatine was smart, he would have leveraged Reconstruction. He could leverage security and peace to the populace with sacrifice. He probably did this to some degree, but, well, his policies didn't quite reflect that. Let's say for 5 to 10 years, Palpatine takes away some of the rights the people had under the Republic, with the reason being they need to rebuild the damage left from the war. Everyone must sacrifice and do their part to make the galaxy a better place. This means people have to be conscripted into the military. This means people have to avoid criticizing the Empire. This means the Empire as we know it, without discriminatory laws against aliens, comes to be because the people sacrifice it to make it a thing. Palpatine wants power to rule the galaxy, but the Empire is constantly doing incredibly cruel things for the lulz, I guess. The Empire does a lot of cruel shit for no real reason, like slavery. Sure, there might be a justification, but the cost outweighs the reward. By dicking people over, you create animosity and hatred, which will one day lead to rebellion. If Palpatine cooled it with the mindless cruelty, and the lives of the people in the galaxy weren't getting substantially worse, the rebellion wouldn't have happened. By promising stability and security if the people sacrifice some individual rights, like freedom of speech and freedom of the press, the people will come to support the empire they helped create. This also means you get rid of your political opponents in the Imperial Senate, without killing people, and without arresting them. If your policies give these people jobs, make them safe, and you don't actively dick them over for no real reason, those who fought against them will get voted out. Just like in real-world politics, if a politician votes against what their constituents want, they eventually get voted out. Over the course of decades, Palpatine would be able to foster and create a galaxy loyal to him. If Palpatine cuts back, again, on the needless cruelty, if he gives the people real reasons as to why he is doing what he is doing, then they'll go along with it. Hell, Thrawn gives Palpatine the best excuse possible to make sure the populace fell in line and sacrificed their rights for the Empire. The Yuuzhan Vong. Imagine this for a moment, if you will. For the first few years, Palpatine uses the Clone Wars as his excuse for doing what he is doing, but over time, this would start to hold little weight. The people would start to get angry, but then walks in every man's favorite blue man with information about a extragalactic race who is coming to our galaxy to take it over. That is a propagandist's dream. If Palpatine shared this information with the people, he could use the Vong as an excuse to ramp up the authoritarian society with the justification that we need to prepare for war. The Vong were going to kill everything and everyone in the galaxy if we don't stop them. We must all do our part to ensure the way of life we have sacrificed so much for. With this excuse, Palpatine could institute the slavery law for criminals, and the populace would be way more accepting of it. We must all do our part. At this point, Palpatine could ramp up conscription. We must all do our part. Also, at this point, he could force people to work at factories, paid, mind you, because we all must do our part. Palpatine would use fear, the people's fear, to gain their loyalty. He would make them afraid of the Vong by telling the truth and stretching the truth to win the people's begrudging loyalty. Those who would speak out would be shamed by their neighbor. The Vong are coming. Do you want us all to die? Do your part. Instead of using fear of force if the people did something, Palpatine would use the fear of destruction if the people did nothing. Then when the Vong come, as the war kicks off and becomes brutal, as witnessed in Legends, the people would see everything as justified as trillions die. They realize their sacrifice meant something. If the Empire wins the war, the people would be all in. They put their trust in Palpatine, and it paid off. The Vong have been defeated, and the Empire is still standing. Palpatine was an idiot because he did cruel things for the sake of being cruel. Then as the rebellion popped up, he amped up his cruelty, justifying it by stating it was to bring stability back to the Empire. Stability which never existed in the first place. If Palpatine continued his strategy of using a crisis to gain more power, if he explained to the people why they had to give up some of their rights, if he wasn't cruel for the sake of being cruel, if he kept the people safe, sheltered, and fed, if their lives didn't get incredibly worse than when they were in the Republic, there wouldn't have been any major rebellions, and those that happened would be looked at with disdain. If Palpatine was patient and did things little by little, if he continued to win over the people, his empire would have stood and he would have stayed alive. Unless Vader killed him, rule of two and all that. Now some of you may be thinking that he did cruel things for the sake of being cruel because he was a Sith. I'd like to point out the Eternal Empire and the Sith Empire from the Old Republic. For the Sith, Vitiate used his people's near destruction and their hatred for the Republic to justify the creation of a totalitarian state loyal to him. Everyone had to do their part to secure the future of the Empire. Valkorion, who was Vitiate, created an empire where he was the supreme authority, but his people loved him. He didn't dick them over, and the lives of the people were great. A ruler following the philosophy of the dark side doesn't have to do cruel things for the sake of being cruel. If Palpatine justified terrible things with an actual reason, if he had a point for doing what he was doing, if he wasn't pointlessly cruel, he would have survived and held on to his empire, but he didn't. And that's what makes him an idiot. However, all of this may not be entirely his fault. I'll touch on this next week, but Palpatine and his actions beg the question, what was the Sith's endgame? What was Palpatine's endgame? So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. This kind of stems from a conversation I had with the people I do a podcast with, the Cantina Roundtable. The first episode is on my channel if you want to check that out. If not, it's all good. So yeah, guys, tell me what you thought down below. I've been Boofire1on1. I'll see you guys all next time. Goodbye.